They say success has a way of silencing the past. But silence, like glass, is fragile. It only takes one crack for the echoes to come rushing back. Clara Davenport was a name etched in headlines, carved into conference halls, whispered in boardrooms with a mixture of admiration and envy. At 41, she had built her fortune in law, not as a cold corporate tactician, but as a relentless advocate for voices buried beneath the rubble of bureaucracy. Her firm specialized in human rights, fighting cases no one else dared to touch: children lost in the system, workers crushed under exploitation, families silenced by corruption. Her victories had made her wealthy. Her eloquence had made her celebrated. And yet, her nights were hollow. Success filled her bank accounts, not her soul. Behind her apartment's glass walls, overlooking a skyline that glittered like false promises, Clara lived in curated solitude. Art on the walls, books in perfect order, wine bottles unopened, everything elegant, everything empty. She told herself she didn't have time for attachments. The truth was crueler. Attachments reminded her of loss. When Clara was 17, she had lost her best friend, Amelia. They had been inseparable two dreamers growing up in a small town where the nights smelled of wet soil and distant fires. Amelia had been reckless, bright, earning too fast. At 20, a car accident tore her away, leaving Clara with the echo of laughter and the ache of what would never be. It was Amelia who had believed Clara could become something more than the daughter of a mechanic and a tired waitress. It was Amelia who had scribbled in her notebook, "You will fight for people the world forgets. Promise me you will." Clara kept the promise. But she never learned to fill the hole Amelia had left. On a cold November evening, fate cruel, precise, ironic decided to shatter her silence. Clara had left her office late, files stacked under her arm, exhaustion like a second skin. The courthouse steps were slick with rain. As she hurried toward her car, she noticed a figure huddled near the iron gates. A child, soaked to the bone, clutching something close to their chest. The streets were nearly deserted, the city holding its breath between storms. Clara might have walked past. She might have told herself someone else would help. But the child looked up, and in that instant, the world split open. Big, watchful eyes, not begging, not pleading defiant, as if daring the world to look away again. The child couldn't have been more than 9. Clothes torn, shoes mismatched, hair tangled with rain. And in their hands, wrapped in a plastic bag, was a faded notebook. Clara knew that notebook. She knew the way the cover curled, the ink smudges on the side. It was Amelia's notebook, the same one where she had written those words so many years ago. Clara froze. Her breath caught like glass in her throat. Where did you get that?" she asked, voice breaking through the rain. The child tightened their grip, shoulders rising like a shield. "It's mine." The defiance was raw, but beneath it trembled something fragile. Clara knelt, rain soaking her expensive coat. "What's your name?" The child hesitated. Noah, a name like a whisper of survival. The notebook pressed to his chest was no coincidence. The scrawl on the first page, Amelia's scrawl, was not imagination. Clara felt the past crawling up her spine, relentless. She whispered, almost to herself, "Amelia had a brother, didn't she?" Noah's eyes flickered, suspicious, sharp beyond his years. "She was my mother," he said flatly, and the world tilted. Clara took Noah to a cafe down the street. Warm lights fogging the windows, the smell of burnt coffee heavy in the air. He sat rigid in the chair, mistrust dripping from every gesture. He reminded her of a cornered animal, hungry, tired, but unwilling to surrender to kindness. Through halting words, Clara pieced together fragments of his life. Amelia had had a son, a secret Clara never knew. After Amelia's death, Noah had been left in the care of his father. A man whose name Noah refused to speak at first, until Clara coaxed it from him. Leonard Hyle, a man with a reputation in the city, charming on the surface, corrupt beneath. He was known in political circles, a donor to campaigns, a manipulator behind curtains. And if Noah's bruised voice was to be believed, a father who drank, shouted, and struck. Clara felt her chest tighten with rage and sorrow. Amelia's child, her child, in some unspoken sense was here, soaked in rain, carrying the ghost of his mother's dreams, and trapped under the hand of a man who should have protected him. Noah chewed the crust of bread she'd ordered for him, eyes darting to the door as if escape was always a heartbeat away. Clara wanted to reach out, to smooth the wet hair from his forehead, to tell him he was safe. But she knew better. Safety was not a word easily believed by a child who had been betrayed too many times. Instead, she said softly, "I knew your mother. She was my best friend. She saved me in ways you can't imagine. And if you'll let me, Noah, I'd like to be here for you." For the first time, the hardness in his gaze cracked. Just a fraction. Just enough to reveal the ache underneath. Taking Noah in was not simple. The system did not bend easily. Guardianship, temporary custody, emergency hearings. It was a labyrinth Clara knew too well. One she had fought against for others countless times. But now the battle was personal. Every form she filed, every call she made, every argument she rehearsed was not for a client, it was for Amelia's son. For Noah, but battles never come alone. Leonard Hyle discovered quickly that Noah had been taken under Clara's care. And Hale was not a man to lose control. He appeared at the firm one morning, polished suit, smile sharp as broken glass. "You're meddling in family business, Miss Davenport," he said smoothly, voice dripping with threat beneath civility. "Noah is my son, my blood. He belongs with me." Clara did not flinch. No child belongs with a man who treats him as you have. His eyes narrowed. "Careful. You build your empire on reputation. One word from me, one story placed in the right hands, and you'll watch it all crumble." Clara had faced corrupt officials, corporations with armies of lawyers, men who thought power meant impunity. But this was different. This was Amelia's son. This was personal. She leaned forward, her voice steady as steel. "Try me," Hale smiled, but it was the smile of a predator marking its prey. And Clara knew the war had begun. Noah did not adjust easily. Nights were restless, haunted by shadows. He woke gasping, trembling, sometimes crying out words he refused to repeat in daylight. He distrusted kindness, recoiled from touch, and tested Clara's patience with silence and rebellion. Yet there were glimpses fleeting, precious of the child beneath the scars. A quick wit when he let slip a joke. A sharp intelligence when he solved a puzzle she left on the coffee table. A tenderness when he stared too long at a stray cat outside the window, whispering, "He looks cold." Clara realized something. Noah was not just surviving. He was fighting, in his own quiet way, to hold on to pieces of himself. And that resilience, so like Amelia's, was what drew Clara closer, what made her more determined than ever to protect him. But Leonard Hall tightened his grip. He filed for custody, using his wealth and influence to paint Clara as unstable, power-hungry, exploiting a dead friend's child for her own reputation. The media caught fire. Headlines twisted facts, talk shows debated morality, and Clara's name was dragged through mud. Every night, Noah watched the television with wide eyes, hearing his father's voice on screen, charming and convincing, saying, "All I want is to bring my son home." "Home," Noah whispered once, bitter as ash. "That's not home." Clara knelt beside him, hand hovering but not touching. "Then we'll show them, Noah. We'll show them the truth. But truth is heavy, and the path to it is darker than most can bear." One night, Noah confessed something. His voice was thin, shaking, as if every word cost him. He keeps papers in his office, things about money, things about people. He makes me stay quiet when visitors come. But I saw. I remember. Clara's heart raced. Evidence. Proof not only of abuse, but of corruption far deeper. But asking a child to remember, to testify, was a weight too cruel. She wanted to tell him to forget, to let her handle it. But Noah looked at her, eyes blazing not with fear, but with something fiercer. I don't want him to win, he said. Not again. It was then Clara realized. Noah was not just the child she was saving. He was the voice of Amelia, the unfinished promise, the resilience of a new generation demanding to be heard. And Clara, for the first time in years, felt her hollow nights stirring with something she had buried, purpose, woven with love, justice burning brighter because it was no longer abstract. It had a name, a face, a heartbeat. Noah. The storm outside her window raged. Inside, Clara whispered to herself, "This time, I will not lose." The weeks that followed were a battlefield of whispers, paperwork, and sleepless nights. Clara had always fought cases with sharp precision, but this time her armor was dented by fear. Fear of losing Noah. Fear of losing Amelia, all over again. Through him, every hearing was a test. Holly arrived in tailored perfection, every word rehearsed, every smile weaponized. He spoke of fatherhood, of mistakes, but also of love. He painted Clara as a career-obsessed woman incapable of nurturing a child. He brought witnesses, neighbors, colleagues, people paid to speak, who nodded solemnly as they told half-truths and outright lies. Clara countered with evidence. Reports of police calls to his house, testimonies from teachers who had noticed bruises, documents showing his financial manipulations. Yet the system was fickle, and Hale's influence deep. For every truth she presented, he twisted another narrative. And poor Noah sat quietly in the courtroom, small hands gripping the notebook that once belonged to his mother. He refused to let it go, as if it were his shield against the storm. At night, back in Clara's apartment, he grew restless. One evening he turned to her and whispered, "They're going to believe him. They always believe him." Clara knelt, her voice low but firm. "Not always, not forever. Truth has a way of breaking through, even when it takes time. You are not invisible, Noah. Not anymore." But she could see the doubt etched into his young face. He had lived too long in the shadow of betrayal to believe easily. The turning point came not in a courtroom, but in the stillness of Clara's apartment. She found Noah awake past midnight, sitting cross-legged on the floor with a notebook open. His finger traced the faded handwriting, Amelia's words, promises scribbled in the margin. "She wrote about you," Noah said, without looking up. Clara's chest tightened. "She did? She said you were the bravest person she knew, that you'd fight for people, even if it cost you everything. She said you were the kind of friend she wished I could have one day." Tears stung Clara's eyes. She hadn't known Amelia had written about her in those pages. She reached out slowly, gently turning the notebook. The words were there, smudged with time but unmistakable. "Clara has the fire of justice. If anything happens to me, I hope she remembers it's not just hers to carry. It's ours." Noah looked up at her, eyes glistening. "Does that mean I can fight too?" Clara cupped his cheek, her voice breaking. "Yes, you can. And you already are." It was the first night Noah fell asleep without trembling. Hale was not blind to the bond forming between Clara and his son, and it enraged him. He escalated, crossing lines he once kept hidden. He leaked stories to tabloids about Clara's past, twisting her friendship with Amelia into whispers of obsession, implying she had manipulated her way into Noah's life to ease her own loneliness. Headlines screamed, "Hero lawyer or opportunist?" Talk shows dissected her every gesture, reducing years of sacrifice to caricature. Clara tried to shield Noah, but he was old enough to read, old enough to hear classmates whisper when the news filtered through. "They say you're using me," he muttered once, bitterness in his tone. "Do you believe them?" Clara asked carefully. He shook his head. "No, but—" "It hurts." Clara pulled him close, heart aching. "They don't know us. They don't know you. Let them talk. We'll drown their lies with truth." But Halle wasn't done. He had one more weapon, and he used it mercilessly. It was a gray morning when Clara received the call. Noah had not arrived at school. The principal assumed he was sick. Clara's blood ran cold. She called the driver who usually picked him up, but he hadn't been there either. Panic clawed at her chest. She called the police. Hours later, after frantic searching, they found Noah in Hale's penthouse. Halle had invoked his parental rights, twisting legal loopholes, exploiting the delay in court decisions. He had claimed Clara was emotionally unfit, citing the media frenzy as proof. And the system, once again, bent toward power. When Clara saw Noah that evening, escorted out of the penthouse by officers who insisted the situation was temporary, his face was pale, his eyes hollow. He didn't cry. He didn't speak. He just clutched the notebook, tighter than ever, as Halle stood smirking behind the glass walls. Clara's fury nearly consumed her, but fury was not enough. Strategy would be her weapon. The next weeks were the darkest of Clara's life. Without Noah in her apartment, the silence grew unbearable. She fought tirelessly, filing motions, appealing rulings, gathering allies. She dug into Hale's finances, into his political connections, into every shadow he thought was safe. And slowly she unearthed cracks, shell companies, secret accounts, donations that smelled of bribery. But the strongest weapon came from Noah himself. On a supervised visit, he slid a folded paper into her hand when no one was looking. It was a child's drawing, clumsy, but clear. A desk, a drawer, papers inside, and in the corner, scrawled words. "He hides them here." Clara understood. Noah had remembered. With the help of investigators she trusted, Clara obtained a warrant. The raid on Hale's office revealed everything documents linking him to fraud, embezzlement, and illegal deals. But more importantly, journals and recordings that hinted at the abuse Noah had endured. Evidence impossible to ignore. Halle fought back, of course. His lawyers painted the evidence as fabricated, a conspiracy orchestrated by Clara. But the tide had shifted. The public began to question. Judges grew cautious. And Noah, brave beyond his years, asked to testify. Clara hesitated. "It's a heavy burden, Noah. Are you sure?" He looked her in the eye, steady, unflinching. "I want them to hear me. I want him to hear me. I'm not afraid anymore." And in that moment, Clara knew. Amelia's fire had not died. It had passed to her son. The courtroom on the day of Noah's testimony was suffocating. Cameras flashed outside, reporters whispered predictions, and the air hummed with tension. Halle sat confident at his table, flanked by lawyers. Clara sat beside Noah, her hand near his but not touching, respecting his need for strength. When Noah took the stand, the room seemed to shrink. His voice was quiet at first, trembling. But as he spoke about nights of shouting, about bruises hidden under sleeves, about fear that aided him like shadows, his voice grew firmer. He spoke of Clara, too. Of the safety he felt in her home, the way she listened without demanding, the way she believed him when no one else did. At one point, Halle shouted, breaking protocol, calling his son a liar. The judge silenced him with a gavel, but the damage was done. The mask had slipped. Everyone saw the predator behind the polished smile. By the time Noah stepped down, the room was silent. And for the first time, Clara allowed herself to hope. The decision came days later. Full custody to Clara Davenport. Restriction of all parental rights from Leonard Heil, pending criminal investigation into his financial crimes and abusive behavior. When the ruling was read, Noah squeezed Clara's hand hard. His eyes filled with tears, but they were not tears of fear. They were tears of release. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, questions flying like arrows. Clara shielded Noah, whispering, "We owe them nothing." But Noah, surprising her, turned to the cameras. "My mom always said the truth matters," he said, voice small but clear. She was right. I'm safe now. Because someone listened. And the world for a moment stopped to listen. Months passed. Healing was not immediate, but it was steady. Noah began to laugh again, hesitant at first, then fuller, freer. He started drawing, filling pages with colors instead of shadows. He still kept the notebook, but now it was not just Amelia's words inside. It was his own. Notes, sketches, dreams. Clara adjusted too. The emptiness of her apartment was gone, replaced with the clutter of a child's life shoes by the door, crayons on the table, laughter in the corners. For the first time in years, she felt the promise of a future not built on victories alone, but on love. Yet Clara and Noah knew their story could not end with them alone. Amelia's words haunted Clara. It's not just yours to carry, it's ours. So they built something together. The Davenport Hale Foundation, not named for power, but for transformation. Its mission, to fight for children caught in shadows, to give them voices, to give them homes. Noah, now older, stood beside Clara at the opening ceremony. His voice, stronger now, carried through the hall. No child should ever feel invisible. My mom believed that. Clara believes that. And now, so do I. This is for every child still waiting to be heard. Applause thundered. Clara closed her eyes, tears slipping free, and whispered to herself, "Amelia, we kept the promise. Life did not erase the scars. It never does." But scars, Clara realized, are not just reminders of pain. They are proof of survival. Every night, when Noah went to bed, Clara would glance at the notebook on his desk. Pages worn, edges frayed, but alive with words. Not just Amelia's anymore. His. The story continued, generation to generation, inked in resilience. And in the quiet of her home, Clara finally felt it. Not silence, not emptiness, but peace, because love once broken had been rewritten, and justice once denied had found its voice.